The night split open with fire. December 24th, 1860, Louisiana. The big house groaned like a dying beast, its roof collapsing into sparks and screaming timber. Glass burst outward, shards glittering against the black sky. From within came cries, half human, half animal. A chandelier crashed, dragging silk gowns and velvet curtains into the inferno. Outside, chains rattled, not from movement but memory. No one begged, no one prayed. The air tasted of ash and blood. In the distance, a child's lullaby floated against the blaze, sweet, fragile, wrong. And then, silence except for fire-devouring wood. Morning light crept across the fields, dull and heavy, as though even the sun carried chains. Sugar cane bent under mist, rose endless, neat as coffins. Inside the stables, a man hummed to himself. His voice was cracked but steady. Ezekiel, the old stable hand, moved with slow, deliberate rhythm, rubbing down a horse that had seen too many whips. His hands were hard leather, scars crossing like maps of suffering. "Keep still, old boy," Ezekiel muttered. "We both been worked near to death." From the doorway, another voice cut through, high, sharp, irritated. "You talk to them beasts more than you talk to people." Ezekiel didn't turn. Beasts don't lie, don't betray, just endure. It was Margaret O'Connor, the young Irish maid, a bundle of linens in her arms. Her face was pale, freckles drowned in exhaustion. She had the look of someone both trapped and unnoticed. She frowned. "If the master hears you speak that..." "Wait, he don't hear me," Ezekiel said, lowering his voice into a rasp. "He hears chains, that's all they ever hear." Margaret's hands tightened around the linens. She wanted to answer, but instead shifted the subject. "You heard them last night, didn't you? Laughing, drinking. They talk of war as though it's just another dance." Ezekiel's lips curled, not into a smile, but something sharper. "War's coming, but not the one they drink for. Fire's coming. Maybe not from the sky, but from men." For a moment, their eyes locked. Hers filled with unease. His burned with something older than anger. The sound of boots on gravel broke the silence. Margaret straightened, pressing the linens against her chest as if they were armor. Ezekiel fell back into humming, the tune low, almost like a prayer. Two men passed outside, overseers' shadows against the stable doors. Their laughter was cruel, their words dripping with contempt. "Yankees'll fold like paper. South'll rise rich as kings. And if the blacks so much as breathe wrong, we'll string 'em up by morning." Margaret flinched. Ezekiel's humming grew louder, covering the words like a shroud. When the voices faded, Margaret whispered, "Sometimes I think God's blind to this place." Ezekiel shook his head. "Not blind, just patient. But patience runs out. Always does." Margaret shivered. She looked at him once more before leaving, footsteps quick as though afraid to be caught standing in his shadow. Ezekiel stroked the horse's mane. His voice dropped, a whisper meant for no one but the animal and himself. "Soon, old boy. Chains'll break in fire." The camera of memory pulled back then, fields stretching wide, big house gleaming white in the distance, quarters hidden behind cane rows like scars behind silk. Everything seemed quiet, but the quiet was a mask. Beneath it, something stirred. Rage, grief, a reckoning waiting for its spark. The quarters were small, dark, and breathing with heat even in winter. Smoke from the cooking fire lingered in the air, clinging to skin, to hair, to lungs. Children's laughter mixed with coughing, and somewhere in the corner a lullaby rose, soft as a thread against the rough walls. At the far end sat Samuel Carter, tall, broad-shouldered, with the silence of a man who had learned the price of words. His hands moved carefully over a block of wood, knife glinting. Shavings curled and fell to the dirt floor. Slowly, a bird took shape, wings spread, beak lifted. His younger brother, Elijah Carter, leaned against the wall, restless energy in every movement. His foot tapped, his fingers drummed against his leg. He broke the silence with a grin that held more defiance than joy. "You carve them birds like they gonna fly us out of here." Samuel glanced at him, steady, unhurried. "Wood don't fly, but it remembers. Every cut's a mark they can't take." Elijah laughed under his breath, shaking his head. "I'd rather set fire than carve." He started humming then, a tune forbidden in the fields. A freedom song. Samuel's knife paused. "Keep that down." "Why?" Elijah's grin widened. "You scared the wall's gonna tell?" From the doorway, a softer voice cut through. Mary Ann, Samuel's wife, stepped in with a bowl of corn mush. Her dress was plain, but her presence carried a quiet strength. She held herself like someone who had seen the inside of the big house too often. Polished floors, cruel eyes, whispered orders. Around her neck, tucked beneath the fabric, a silver locket pressed against her skin. She set the bowl down and looked at Elijah. "Your singing will bring nothing but trouble." Elijah tilted his head, smirk playful but eyes sharp. "Trouble's already here, Mary Ann. Trouble's all this place is." Samuel handed her the wooden bird, unfinished but already alive in its form. "Keep this for Sarah Lou. She's always staring at the sky." Mary Ann traced the carving with her thumb. "A bird that can't fly," she said softly. Then looking at him, "But maybe it reminds us that one day, we will." Elijah leaned forward, fire in his voice. "One day ain't good enough. I want now, tonight. Burn the cane, cut the overseer's throat while he sleeps. You think they wouldn't deserve it?" Silence. The only sound was the crackle of firewood. Samuel's jaw tightened. Deserving ain't the question. Living is. You want to die quick or wait and fight smart? Elijah stared at him, eyes blazing, then turned away with a mutter. Maybe smart's just another word for scared. Mary Ann's hand found Samuel's shoulder. Her touch steadied him. She spoke not to Elijah, not to Samuel, but to the silence itself. "They think we're nothing but hands for their cane. But we got names. We got love. That's what they can't whip out of us." The locket gleamed as she shifted, catching the firelight. Samuel returned to carving. Elijah hummed again, defiant. Outside, the wind carried the smell of burning cane. Smoke always close, even when the fields were calm. The cane fields swayed, under the sun like a sea of knives. Heat shimmered, bending the air, pressing down on backs already bent. The sound of whips cracked like thunder, but thunder never lingered. Whips did. Thomas Calhoun walked the rows with a bottle in hand. His boots sank into the dirt as though even the earth wanted to swallow him whole. He was not a man of patience. His words slurred with whiskey. His hands itched for punishment. His whip, slick black leather, coiled at his side. He had named it Black Mary. Every slave on the plantation knew her voice. He stopped near Samuel, narrowed his eyes. "You, big one, faster." Samuel straightened just enough to meet his gaze. Sweat stung his eyes, but he didn't flinch. "Yes, sir," Calhoun smirked, taking a swig. "Good. Don't make me sing Black Mary today." He staggered off, his shadow long across the cane. From the next row came a soft voice, too small for Calhoun's ears but clear to Samuel's. "Don't listen. He just loud. He don't own your spirit." Samuel turned. A girl, no older than 12, was kneeling in the dirt, tying cane stalks with hands too delicate for such work. Sarah Lou. Her hair stuck to her face, her dress torn at the hem. Yet, she hummed as she worked, a lullaby low and steady. Samuel softened. "Where'd you hear that song?" She smiled faintly. "Mama," before they sold her. She said, "Sing when you scared. Sing, and fear goes quiet." Samuel crouched, placing his carved bird in her hand. "Then sing louder. Let the song carry what? We can't say." Her eyes widened at the bird. She clutched it close, as though afraid the wind might take it. That night, back in the quarters, the air was thick with smoke from the cooking fire. Mary Ann sat beside Sarah Lou, showing her letters drawn into the dirt. "This one's an A, Like apple. Sarah Lou whispered, "What's an apple?" Mary Ann paused, then smiled sadly. Something sweet. Something they keep for themselves. Sarah Lou traced the letter again. Careful, reverent. If I can read, maybe I can find Mama. Mary Ann touched her cheek. Maybe you can write her name so the world don't forget her. In the shadows, Ezekiel watched. His scarred hands rubbed together like tinder. He spoke low to Samuel. "You. Let the girl learn, they'll kill her." Samuel's voice was steady. "If she don't learn, they already killed her spirit." Elijah burst into the room then, his energy like fire breaking silence. "We should stop hiding like rabbits. You, hear the overseer today?" He looked at me like he already knows, like he just waiting. Samuel cut him off. "And you? You want to give him reason? You keep singing out there, keep baiting him." Elijah laughed bitterly. "You think keeping quiet gonna save us? They'll kill us for breathing. At least, let them kill us loud." The room grew tense. Even Sarah Lou lowered her eyes, clutching the wooden bird tighter. Then came footsteps outside. Heavy, uneven. Calhoun. His voice broke through the door like splinters. "You hear me in there? I smell talking, and I don't like talking I can't hear." The room froze. Mary Ann pressed Sarah Lou against her side. Samuel's hand closed around the knife he used for carving. Elijah stepped forward, bold, reckless. "We just tired. Sir, ain't no talk worth hearing." Calhoun shoved the door open, whiskey on his breath, whip dangling from his fist. His eyes scanned the room. Lingered on Samuel, then on Mary Ann too long. "You keep your mouth shut. Tomorrow you sing only in the fields with your backs bent." His gaze cut to Elijah. "Especially you. Got a tongue on you, boy. One day, I'll cut it out." Elijah's jaw clenched. His hand twitched, but Samuel's grip on his arm held him still. Calhoun spat on the floor and staggered out, leaving the room heavy with silence. When he was gone, Elijah hissed, "One day, I'll..." Put his own whip round his neck. Samuel didn't answer, but Mary Ann whispered almost like a prayer, "One day, but not tonight." Sarah Lou's lullaby rose again, trembling but unbroken. The sun hung heavy over the cane, burning the sweat into skin. The day felt wrong, charged. The air itself seemed to wait. In the yard, slaves were gathered, pulled from fields, kitchens, stables. A stage had been made of dirt and heat, and on it stood Thomas Calhoun, whip coiled like a serpent in his hand, whiskey staining his breath. At his feet knelt Elijah Carter. His shirt was torn open, back slick with dust and blood where the overseer had already struck once. But Elijah's face burned brighter than the sun, his eyes alive with fury. Calhoun's voice rang out. "This one here thinks he's a man, thinks his tongue can wag free, thinks he can sing when I tell him hush." He lifted the whip. Today he learns different. Samuel stood among the crowd, fists clenched so hard his nails cut his palms. Mary Ann held little Sarah Lou against her skirt, trying to turn the girl's head away. But Sarah Lou looked still, unblinking. The whip cracked. Elijah's body jerked, but his mouth twisted into a grin. "That all you got?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ezekiel closed his eyes. Jonas muttered, "Lord have mercy." Calhoun snarled, striking again. The leather tore across Elijah's shoulders, flesh opening. Still Elijah laughed, spitting blood onto the dirt. "You hit like a drunk old man." The overseer's face went red. Blow after blow rained down, the sound louder than thunder, sharper than gunfire. Elijah's back became a canvas of blood, but his voice rose through it, half scream, half song. A freedom song, ragged, defiant. Samuel stepped forward, trembling, but Ezekiel's hand gripped his arm. "Don't. Not yet." Calhoun, panting, raised the whip high for one final strike. Elijah staggered, lifted his head, and with the last of his breath he spat his words into the overseer's face. "If I burn, you burn with me." The whip fell, and silence followed. Elijah collapsed, body shaking, blood pooling. But his words had already traveled into Samuel's bones, into Mary Ann's heart, into Sarah Lou's wide, tear-filled eyes. The crowd had heard. The seed had been planted. Calhoun wiped sweat from his brow, glaring at the silent slaves. You see what happens? You sing, you burn. Keep your heads down, or next time it's your turn. He staggered off, leaving Elijah in the dirt. Mary Ann rushed forward, kneeling beside him. Elijah, please stay with me. Her hands pressed to his wounds, trying to stop the bleeding. Elijah's lips trembled, but his eyes locked on Samuel. Don't let it be for nothing. Samuel knelt too, lifting his brother's head gently. His silence was a storm building. Ezekiel whispered from behind, voice like gravel. That boy just lit a fire no man can put out. The slaves slowly dispersed, forced back to their work. But they carried the words with them. They carried the sight of Elijah's blood mixing with dust. That night in the quarters, silence weighed heavy. Elijah lay wrapped in rags, breath shallow, but his eyes still burned. Samuel sat close, unmoving. Mary Ann hummed a lullaby, soft, trembling, trying to quiet the rage inside the walls. Sarah Lou echoed the song, clutching the wooden bird tight to her chest. Ezekiel leaned near Samuel, voice low. You heard him. Fire. That's what's coming. That's what's needed. Samuel stared into the flames of the small hearth, the light flickering across his face. He said nothing, but in his silence was the promise of storms. Night thickened around the quarters, moonlight silver against cane fields. The air smelled of smoke, of sweat, of secrets. Inside, the fire was dim, just enough to see faces. Samuel sat at the center, Elijah's rag-wrapped body propped against the wall, pale but still burning inside. Mary Ann worked quietly with strips of cloth, her hands steady even as her heart trembled. Ezekiel's voice rasped. Patience runs out. Boys' words won't fade. Time's near. Samuel lifted a small wooden bird, unfinished, hollowed inside. He held it up to the light. These can carry what we need. Jonas the blacksmith leaned in. His hands smelled of iron, his palms calloused from shaping chains he hated. His eyes glimmered as Samuel poured a small pouch of match heads into the hollow bird. You give me more time, I'll shape nails into blades. Doors will shut, and they won't open till fire says so. Elijah's voice cracked but sharp. Good. Lock them in. Make 'em scream like I screamed. Mary Ann pressed his shoulder. Don't waste breath on hate. But Elijah only laughed, a sound half mad, half miracle. Rebecca sat near the fire, her eyes hollow. She rocked gently, whispering to herself. She had lost 3 children to traders, sold south, never seen again. Tonight her voice rose into a lullaby, not of comfort but of mourning. They took 'em, burned their names in the sky. Samuel bowed his head. We'll burn their names, but with fire that frees. A sudden knock rattled the door. Everyone froze. Mary Ann shoved the pouch of matches beneath a rag. Jonas slipped his forged nails back into his apron. Ezekiel blew out the lamp. The door creaked open. Margaret O'Connor, the maid. Her pale face caught the dim glow. She looked at them, eyes darting, then at Elijah's bandaged body. You'll get yourselves killed, Ezekiel snarled. Why? Are you here, girl? She shifted, clutching her shawl. I saw the rags, the oil, I'm not blind. Samuel's voice was steady, low. Then you know what we must do. Margaret's lips trembled. If I say a word, the overseer will have me hanged alongside you. If I stay silent, I carry this guilt forever. Rebecca's voice cut through, sharp and hollow. Better guilt than chains. Margaret looked at Samuel. You'll fail. They always fail. Samuel stared back, calm as stone. Not always. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she turned, leaving the door half open. Her footsteps faded. Ezekiel whispered, she'll break. Samuel shook his head. She's trapped same as us. And sometimes the trapped look the other way. From outside, boots scraped. The sound of Thomas Calhoun's drunken humming slithered closer. Samuel swept the bird into his pocket. Mary Ann smoothed her dress as though nothing stirred. Jonas laid his hands flat as iron. Calhoun's shadow passed across the door, lingering. His voice, slow, poison dripped. Quiet night. Too quiet. The silence screamed. At last, his steps drifted away. Mary Ann let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Samuel closed his fist over the wooden bird, the weight of fire hidden inside. "We're ready," he whispered. The Calhoun plantation shone like a cathedral of excess. Torches lined the drive, their flames bowing in the cold December wind. Carriages rattled in, wheels crunching gravel, powdered wigs and silk gowns emerging like peacocks strutting into a cage of gold. Inside the grand hall, candles burned from chandelier to wall, hundreds of tiny flames feeding on tallow. The air reeked of roasted meats, spiced wine, and perfume thick enough to choke. Musicians tuned violins, a harpsichord clinked bright as glass, and the floorboards trembled under the stomp of boots and satin slippers. Above it all, laughter rang, too loud, too sharp, too blind. And below, in the kitchens, shadows moved. Samuel pressed his palm against the wooden bird in his pocket. His breath was steady, his eyes fixed on every detail. Jonas the blacksmith fed logs into the hearth, but the logs were not only wood, they were hollowed, packed with pitch, with nails twisted sharp. Mary Ann passed silver trays into eager hands, her smile the mask of survival, her apron heavy with matches. Ezekiel poured wine, but his hand always hovered too long near the oil lamp, tipping, dripping, each drop a promise. Elijah, limping, pale but alive, moved among them, a ragged ghost with eyes burning brighter than any chandelier. He whispered to Samuel. Tonight they choke on their laughter. Rebecca lingered at the far end of the kitchen, rocking, whispering her lullaby under her breath. Her words wound through the smoke like prophecy. They took mine. Tonight the fire takes theirs. Music swelled. Above, the dancing began. Thomas Calhoun clapped his fat hands, roaring to his guests. Dance, my friends, dance till the devil himself grows jealous. His son William raised a glass. To fortune, to land, to every chain that makes us kings. Their laughter spilled down the staircase like broken glass. Margaret O'Connor moved through the servants' corridor, pale as wax. Her eyes darted to Samuel. For a moment she paused, lips parted. Samuel caught her gaze, unreadable. She turned away, vanishing back into the swirl of gowns. Ezekiel's voice rumbled low. She'll betray us. Samuel shook his head. If she was going to, we'd already be dead. At the stroke of midnight, the signal came. Mary Ann lit the first match, hidden behind her tray. The sulfur hissed, a tiny serpent of fire. She touched it to the oil-soaked rag beneath the hearth. Flames licked wood, greedy, spreading like whispers in a crowd. Jonas barred the side doors with iron rods, quiet as a prayer. The windows were latched, nails twisted through hinges. Samuel strode into the hall, carrying a silver jug. He poured wine for Calhoun himself, eyes level, unflinching. Calhoun smirked. A good boy, you serve well. Samuel's lips barely moved. Not for long. A crack snapped from the kitchen. Smoke began to creep along the floorboards, soft, almost shy. Then another crack, louder, as if the house itself coughed. The music stuttered. A violin shrieked, not in melody, but in terror. William laughed first. Firewood too green. But the smoke thickened. Flames surged through the servants' passage, kissing tapestries, swallowing curtains. Guests screamed, silk gowns dragging across the floor like kindling. Samuel's voice cut through the chaos. Now, Ezekiel overturned the lamp at the stairwell. Fire burst upward, a golden tongue racing toward the second floor. Jonas flung open the banquet doors only to slam them shut again, iron holding against frantic hands. Mary Ann dropped her tray of wine onto the flames, feeding them higher. And Rebecca's lullaby rose louder, piercing through screams. Burn their names in the sky. Burn their names. The grand chandelier groaned above, candles dripping molten wax as smoke wrapped it in black fingers. Guests clawed at windows, only to find them nailed shut. Calhoun roared, his voice turning feral. "You dogs, you dare!" He grabbed Samuel by the collar, dragging him close. His spit flew hot, his grip crushing. "You'll die first." But Samuel did not flinch. He pressed the wooden bird into Calhoun's chest. "You first." The bird cracked open, match heads spilling, fire catching. Calhoun's waistcoat bloomed with flame. He staggered back, shrieking, his own haul becoming his pyre. William lunged with a pistol, cocked and ready. Elijah, limping, broken, hurled himself into the path. The shot thundered. Elijah fell, blood bursting across the floor. But in his fall, his hand caught William's wrist, dragging him into the fire's path. Both were consumed, one screaming, one silent. Mary Ann cried out, rushing to Elijah's side, but Samuel pulled her back. No, he chose this. The chandelier snapped. With a roar like judgment, it crashed to the floor, scattering molten flame across silk and flesh alike. Outside, bells clanged, neighbors, overseers, riders rushing. Shadows with torches surged down the drive. The enslaved scattered, some toward the woods, others into the blaze itself. Margaret reappeared at the back door, her face streaked with ash. She held it open, shouting, "This way now!" Samuel seized Mary Ann's hand, shoving Rebecca forward. Jonas barreled through, his iron-forged strength clearing the path. Smoke tore their throats raw, heat blistered skin, but they pushed into the night. Behind them, the Calhoun mansion screamed as it died. Flames painted the sky red, visible for miles. A beacon, a warning, a hymn. And on the steps, Thomas Calhoun burned, roaring curses until his voice cracked, until his words were nothing but embers. The night after the fire, the swamp swallowed the fugitives whole. Cypress trees loomed like black sentinels, their roots twisting from the muck. The air reeked of smoke and rot, frogs croaking like drums in the silence. Samuel led the group, his shirt torn, his face streaked with soot. Behind him stumbled Mary Ann, clutching Rebecca's trembling arm. Jonas carried Elijah's bloodied sash knotted around his waist, his jaw locked like iron. Ezekiel limped but refused to slow, his chest heaving like a bellows. Rebecca whispered through cracked lips, "They're coming. I hear the dogs." Indeed, the night trembled with baying. Hounds hungry and trained, their howls cutting through the swamp. Lanterns flickered in the distance, overseers and militiamen thrashing through brush, their curses snapping like whips. Samuel stopped, crouching low. "We keep moving. Stay close. Do not look back." Jonas muttered, "They'll smell us, Samuel." "Nothing hides from dogs." Samuel touched the wooden bird in his pocket, scorched but whole. His voice was low, unyielding. "Then we make them choke on smoke before they catch us." They pressed deeper into the muck, bodies slick with mud, their breath ragged. Mary Ann stumbled, her apron catching on a root. Samuel pulled her free, his hand squeezing hers just a second too long. She met his eyes, searching, but neither spoke. Behind them, a gunshot cracked. Bark splintered from a tree. Rebecca screamed, the sound strangled into sobs. Voices shouted, "There! In the swamp!" The fugitives broke into a run. Water splashed, up their legs, cold and stinking. Jonas grabbed Rebecca and hauled her forward as the hounds closed in, their teeth snapping at shadows. Then from the reeds, a figure appeared. Margaret O'Connor. Lantern in hand, her face pale, her gown shredded. Ezekiel snarled, "I knew it, betrayer." Margaret raised both hands. "No, I came to lead you out." Jonas growled, eyes narrowing. "Or lead us to the rope." Samuel stared hard at her. The swamp hissed around them, every second a wait. Finally, he spoke. "If you're lying, you die before we do." Margaret's voice shook. "I swear. This way. North. There's a crossing the dogs can't track." The baying grew louder. Samuel nodded once, led. They followed her through the reeds, hearts hammering. The swamp thickened, mosquitoes whining, roots tearing at their ankles. Behind, the firelight of torches smeared against the mist. For a moment, hope flickered, but betrayal is patient. At dawn, they reached the river crossing, shallow but wide, the current thick with silt. Samuel scanned the far bank. Freedom seemed close enough to taste. He turned to Margaret. "You first? Show us the way." Margaret's eyes brimmed with tears. She shook her head. I can't swim." Ezekiel spat into the mud. "A liar, always was." Before Samuel could answer, horns blared. From the tree line emerged riders, militiamen, rifles gleaming, dogs frothing. Behind them, shackles clinked like a song already written. Margaret dropped to her knees, sobbing. I tried to help." Jonas roared in fury, but Samuel held him back. His voice was flat, deadened. She led them. Whether she meant to or not, she led them. The dogs lunged. Men shouted. Gunfire cracked. Ezekiel staggered, hit in the side, falling into the water. Mary Ann screamed, dragging him up, but soldiers swarmed, iron chains flashing in the dawn. Samuel fought like a storm, fists and fury, until 3 men forced him to the ground. His cheek pressed into the mud, cold steel biting his wrists. Rebecca wailed her lullaby, torn and broken. "Burn their names. Burn their names." Her song was drowned by the clash of chains. Days later, the trials began. The courthouse reeked of sweat and wood smoke, packed with white faces hungry for spectacle. The enslaved were brought in shackled, their feet bare on the cold floor. Samuel, Jonas, Mary Ann, Rebecca. Ezekiel lay in a wagon outside, half dead, chained even in pain. The judge, a man with lips thin as blades, called them conspirators, murderers, devils in human form. Witnesses spat lies. Overseers testified with venom. Margaret O'Connor appeared, veiled in black, swearing she had tried to stop them. Jonas slammed his chains against the bench, roaring, "You starved us, whipped us, burned us. The fire was yours before it was ours." Guards beat him down until blood stained the wood. Mary Ann spoke next, her voice trembling but clear. "You call us devils, but it was you who made hell." The courtroom erupted in jeers. The judge banged his gavel until the sound was like gunshots. Samuel said nothing. He only stared at the jury, his eyes hollow, his silence heavier than any word. The verdict was certain before the first witness spoke. Guilty, all guilty, execution by hanging. The gallows rose against a gray sky, crows circling like witnesses. A crowd gathered, eager for death dressed as justice. Children sat on shoulders, women fanned themselves, men spat tobacco. Rebecca was first. She sang as they led her up, her lullaby carrying over the field. "Sleep, little one, sleep." The rope snapped, her voice cutting off like a candle in the wind. Jonas followed, unbowed, shouting until the noose choked the words from him. His last cry, "Free." Mary Ann trembled, but before the hood dropped, she whispered to Samuel, "Remember me." Then the trapdoor opened. Samuel was last. The rope hung before him, rough, frayed, reeking of old sweat and death. He touched the wooden bird in his pocket one final time. A guard sneered. "Any last words, boy?" Samuel lifted his head. His voice was steady, cold as stone. "You can kill a man. You cannot kill a fire." The crowd murmured. The rope tightened. The sky darkened as if in answer. When the trap released, silence fell over the field. But silence is never forever. That night, in the quarters of the enslaved across the county, whispers rose like smoke. Children heard the tale. Mothers hummed Rebecca's lullaby. Men tapped chains together in rhythm, quiet but unbroken. And in the ashes of the Calhoun mansion, buried beneath cinders and bone, the wooden bird waited. The smoke was gone, the ashes cooled. Yet the story of the fire at Calhoun Plantation did not die with the rebels. It lingered, carried on the wind, carried in the whispers of the enslaved, carried in the nightmares of those who thought themselves masters. In the quarters, women hummed Rebecca's lullaby to children restless in the dark. Not as a cradle song, Now, but as a warning, fire sleeps, but it wakes when chains tighten too far. In the fields, when overseers cracked their whips, men sometimes met each other's eyes. A glance was enough. They remembered Samuel's last words. "You can kill a man. You cannot kill a fire." Those words became a kind of prayer, muttered when backs bent under cotton sacks, when wounds burned with salt. Jonas's roar, Mary Ann's trembling defiance, Ezekiel's blood in the swamp, none were forgotten. They became fragments of a larger truth, a tale too dangerous to write, too costly to speak aloud, but one that lived in the marrow of those who endured. "Even the white," folk whispered. At night, planters told their children cautionary tales of the Calhoun devils, slaves who rose from their chains to burn the world. They meant it as a warning, but warnings carry power. Fear itself kept the story alive. Years later, when other rebellions stirred in other places, some swore they heard echoes of the Calhoun fire. Songs in the cane fields carried hints of Rebecca's lullaby. Wooden charms carved by hidden hands appeared on cabin walls, shaped like birds rising. And always, there was Samuel's name, spoken quietly, never too loud, like an ember too precious, too exposed to cold air. Some said he had not died at all, that the noose broke, that he slipped into the swamp, that he still walked the shadows waiting for the right night to rise again. Truth or legend, it did not matter. What mattered was the fear in the masters' hearts. What mattered was the hope it stirred in the enslaved. The Calhoun rebellion was crushed in blood, but fire spreads in ways no rope can bind. The camera pans slowly over the ruins of the mansion, weeds curling through blackened stone. Beneath the ash, unseen, the wooden bird lies half-buried, wings outstretched, waiting. History is not written by fire. History is written by those who fear it. Yet fire leaves its scars all the same, and sometimes scars burn longer than flesh. The flames of Calhoun Plantation died, but the questions they lit never dimmed. What drives a man, a woman, to stand against the impossible? Was it desperation, or was it faith? Was it madness, or the purest form of courage? Every rebellion leaves two legacies, the official one written by power and the hidden one carried in silence by the powerless. The Calhoun Rebellion was branded a crime, a nightmare, a savage act of vengeance. Yet beneath that surface lies another truth, that human dignity will claw, bite, and burn when stripped to its last breath. In the face of whips, chains, and gallows, these men and women dared to believe in something bigger than survival. They believed in freedom, and belief, once kindled, spreads like fire. We are left not just with blood and ash, but with a mirror showing us what it means to be human, to choose between submission and defiance, silence and voice, chains and fire. History may try to bury them under dates, decrees, and judgments. But listen closely and you will hear the echoes still, in the lullabies sung soft in the night, in the soil tilled by trembling hands, in the silence between whip cracks. Their story does not ask for pity, it demands remembrance. The story of the Calhoun fire is not just history. It is a warning and it is a promise. A warning that oppression breeds resistance, always. A promise that even in the darkest corners someone will rise. They tried to erase the names of Samuel, Rebecca, Jonas, Ezekiel, Mary Ann, but names live as long as they are spoken. And tonight, we have spoken them again. The chains rattled, the fire burned, and though the rebellion was crushed, its flame was never fully extinguished. It still burns in every struggle for freedom, in every voice that refuses to be silenced. This was not just their fight. It is ours to remember, because stories like these are more than history. They are resistance. This is the slave resistance, and some fires never die.